Hi, welcome to the Inner Powered Life community. This is Robbie, and I'm coming to you today with the first of a several-part series about setting healthy boundaries. Boundaries have become kind of a catchphrase and a buzzword in the mental health and wellness community, and in survivor communities, and in spiritual and personal development communities. And there's a reason for that, because without healthy boundaries, we can find ourselves becoming engaged in very unhealthy and toxic dynamics in many aspects of our lives that do not serve us and that actually do not serve those with whom we are engaged. And so I wanted to start today talking about this, and where we're going to go is actually a multi-pronged approach. So for most of us, our understanding of boundaries is a list of things that people are not allowed to do to us, or things that we are not going to do. And while this is true, and these things need to happen, is also a very simplistic definition of what boundaries look like. So healthy boundaries are not only what we will not deal with from other people if it's very obviously toxic, it's also what we will not engage with. It is having an understanding of what is a healthy boundary and what is a fear-based, avoidant, or narcissistic response. It's also understanding if we have boundaries imposed on us, is this a tool of narcissistic a manipulation? Is it an avoidant person doing this? Or have we in fact done something to inadvertently violate somebody else, and we need to be introspective? It can be very complicated. It does require a lot of deep diving and understanding oneself and clarification. And so we will get into all of this over the course of the series. But for today, I wanted to start with the most foundational part of boundary setting, which is setting boundaries with ourselves. And for a lot of us who have a background of abuse and bullying, which is often at the hands of our primary caregivers, and maybe these individuals were diagnosed or undiagnosed narcissists, they may have had borderline personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, various addictions. There can be a lot of generational trauma, things that are involved with that. This may sound odd for some people, but there are those of us who came from families who practiced dark arts, and they meant it in a very vindictive and malicious and controlling way, and it presented a lot of trauma and a lot of other things onto the targets. And so those of us who are coming from this background have a lot of issues to work through. And for us, the entire concept of boundaries is very complicated, because most human beings from our early childhood, when we can actually communicate or do anything, are very well of our autonomy, and we actually have an innate sense of self-worth. However, if we are constantly confronted by abusers who continually violate our boundaries and punish us if we attempt to establish any kind of boundary, the whole thing can be very confusing and create a lot of cognitive dissonance within us, because we know our worth. We know what's right and what's wrong, but at the same time we're being told, you're the kid, I'm the adult, I can do whatever. Any adult can do whatever. You have no right to establish physical, mental, emotional, sexual, financial, any other kind of boundaries, because I overruled you. You're wrong, I'm right. You're wrong, everybody else is right. If you try to stick up for yourself, you're wrong. If you stick up for yourself, you're disrespecting adults. If you stick up for yourself, you're violating our cultural or religious or family traditions and moral paradigms. And so we have this constant conflict of understanding what's happening to us is wrong, but also being told that we're wrong for establishing any kind of boundaries or sticking up for ourselves, or making any kind of statement of, hey, this is not right. For some of us, if we did, even as a child, try to establish boundaries, we could have been shamed, verbally abused, or even physically abused and punished for disrespecting the adult, because you're told that everybody else has a right to do something to you regardless. You're wrong, you're the kid, suck it up, we can do whatever. And so we can start carrying this forward into our life, even as very young school children, where our peers are the authority. The abusive, bullying kids who are 7 years old in our first grade class are the authority, because we've been told you're wrong, everybody else is right. And the teachers are right. And then it's the boyfriends and girlfriends are right, and the employers are right, and the partners are right, and the social groups are right, and the frenemies are right, and everybody's right and we're wrong. And if we establish boundaries, it's because we're a bad person. They're right, we're wrong, we have no right to do this, we're not worth it, and it doesn't matter because you're going, we win, you lose, is the feedback that we get from abusers in our lives. And so even though we have this spark in us that comes up that tells us, I deserve better than this, there's a lot of warring that goes on. And even if we have very poor self-esteem, which a lot of survivors of bullying and abuse do, there's that part in us that comes up and is like, no, this is wrong, because we know who we are. And we know we deserve better. And we know that this is dysfunctional and this is toxic and in some cases extremely evil. And there's a lot of things that go into us processing this and dealing with it. And what we can find ourselves in the position of doing is we finally have enough. And we establish very hard boundaries with people, which could mean cutting them off completely, which is absolutely necessary in some cases, right? Sometimes it can be dysfunctional. We cut people off who don't need to be cut off because we feel triggered, even though they aren't actually doing something. There's something that's happened that's mimicked an abuser. And I'll get to that in another video because that's another thing. But there are times when it is absolutely appropriate and completely necessary to completely cut off family members, partners, employers, friends, and whoever who are very blatant, obvious abusers and bullies. And we have to do this maybe not just for our own physical and emotional and spiritual safety, but for our physical safety. And that's a whole issue. If you are in a position where you need to sever contact with someone for your physical and basic emotional health, you have a right to do that. You have a right to your sovereignty as a person to protect yourself from that, okay? Regardless of even if they're your blood family, okay? If they are abusers, you have a right to stop it, because there's a threshold of what's right and what's wrong. And bloodline, kin, and spiritual authority and age and all this kind of thing does not make somebody your superior in any way. If they are being abusers, this tells you who they are, and it doesn't matter what your cultural and family and religious paradigm is. These people are showing who they are. They are not aligning with what is good for others. They are functioning from a very, very unhealthy paradigm, okay? So you 100% have the right to do this if you are in danger. Absolutely. As we also go into these things, because we're already conditioned to accept abuse, we can fall victim to narcissistic abusers who tell you, you don't have a right to set a boundary. You're a bad person if you do that, and you're just blowing things out of proportion, and I didn't do anything, and I'm your mother, father, spouse, pastor, imam, guru, whatever, whatever it is in your social construct and family construct. They exploit this to give themselves a psychological advantage over you. It's not right. If they are abusers, they are not acting in your highest good. They're not acting in their highest good. They're not acting in the highest good of any community or spiritual group or philosophy that they are representing, okay? They do not. Even if you are not of like a Christian background, the Bible says, by your fruits you know them, right? So if they're producing thorns and poisonous fruit, they aren't roses, right? They're poisonous fruit. And so you can see what they're doing and who they are because what's manifesting. And they probably have a lot of trauma and there's a lot of stuff in their background. That is 100% true. But a trauma background does not give somebody license to become an abuser. There are just as many people who went through horrendous trauma who became wonderful, good people who are advocates and supporters, just gorgeous souls, as there are people who went through abuse and are like, well, I'm just like this because I was abused and I can't help it that I abuse people. No. Becoming an abuser is a choice. Always. You can honor that there's part of their humanity that was damaged without accepting that that is an excuse for them to continue to do what they do. There is 100% a difference, okay? And you are allowed and should distinguish between that, because narcissistic abusers will use legitimate abuse stories to continue to perpetuate that abuse onto other people, because they say hurt people and I can't do anything about it. No, they can't. They're making a choice to continue toxic patterns. So there's so much that can go into this that we bring forward. And as we start our healing journey, the foundation of being able to set healthy boundaries with others means being able to set healthy boundaries with ourselves. And this can sound kind of odd, maybe to some people, like, I have healthy boundaries with myself. But how many times do you run back in to pander to an abusive partner, ex-partner, parent, friend, social group, spiritual group, whoever, to keep the peace because you're actually afraid that if you make them mad and you stand up for themselves, they're going to do something to you? That is a fear-based narcissistic abuse punishment system, where if you don't pander to me, I'm going to get you. I'm going to punish you. A lot of us had this background, and it was a reality for us that if we did anything to oppose us, we were punished. Emotionally, financially, verbally, and sometimes physically abused for standing up for ourselves and defining boundaries with our abusers. We carry this into adult groups, and we then project that onto everybody else. If you can disengage as much as possible from anybody who acts like this, please do so. Obviously, there may be other considerations, but either disengage or minimize your interaction with these people to the extent possible so that you can start acting from a place of peace. Another thing that a lot of us have, particularly if you've come from a background where you didn't feel particularly loved, and then you looked for love from romantic partners, and then you got rejected because you kept choosing unhealthy people. Don't chase them. Don't stalk their social media. Don't beg them to take you back, because anyone who would treat you poorly is not the person you imagined them to be. And for a lot of us who came from a rejection and abandonment or an abuse background, when we find somebody that we feel resonates, we project everything that's beautiful and lovely and wonderful on them, and they're the Prince Charming or the Disney Princess Queen, or whatever your vision of the ideal partner is. And sometimes we project that onto people who are not actually embodying that, or maybe they do sometimes, but they have a lot of brokenness that they aren't addressing, and so they vacillate between this incredibly amazing human being and somebody who's very toxic and abusive and rejecting to you. And so when you're used to being rejected and you're used to being bullied, and you find somebody that you thought was okay, or you thought they loved you, or they thought you thought they were your friend, or whatever it was, then you'll run after them to pander, beg them to please take you back. And this is a very toxic pattern. It's not establishing a boundary with yourself of this person, for whatever their reason was, which actually doesn't even matter, chose to project rejection on to me, or do whatever they did. If they would do that to you, they aren't this incredible, amazing human being that you thought they were. If you were not an abuser and you came from a place of actual love and respect and honoring, and not manipulating and not drama and all this stuff, and you were actually trying to be a healthy person and they did this, there's a lot of them that is still unhealed, and that's not something that you need to engage with. It's not something you can fix, and it's not something that you are obligated to fix. Okay, so for your own peace of mind and your own emotional health, step back from that. Don't stalk them, don't beg them, don't run after them. If and when they are willing to do the emotional and spiritual and mental work to heal themselves and come back and present in a way that is not toxic, that's a different story, but you can't force that. And honestly, you don't want to continue to engage with somebody who is going to keep toxic patterns going of in and out, and we're cool now, and now I'm rejecting you, and I don't want to talk to you, but now we're good. No, that is abusive and that is toxic. You do not need to deal with that. You deserve better than that. The other thing you want to do is start stepping back from gaslighting, because yes, we can use boundaries in an avoidant way, and in a way which is actually toxic to ourselves and others, and I'll get to that in another video. But we can also have narcissistic abusers telling us that any boundaries we're doing are toxic, and oh, you're doing this to me or whatever, and it's a completely narcissistic, abusive, awful way of being. And they will often use family dynamics, family loyalty, cultural paradigms, religious traditions to tell you that you're a horrible person if you don't just forgive them immediately and let them keep doing what they're doing. Forgiveness is a completely different concept from access. And this is something that is very often misrepresented and misapplied in a lot of contexts, but particularly in spiritual and religious contexts, where it's like, well, you have to forgive everything that everybody does to you, and then when you forgive them, you have to take them back and let them do the same thing 100,000 times. No, you don't. You can say, okay, this person has done what they've done. I'm not going to carry this trauma and drama in me, and I'm going to acknowledge that they did what they did and I felt the way I did, but I'm going to release them from this. But that doesn't mean I have to let them back in my life to do the same thing over and over again. And I have a Christian background, and I consider myself to be a follower of Jesus Christ. However, churches do misconstrue this, that forgiveness means you have to let abusers, especially if they're family members, do the same thing for 70 years. Because you have to forgive them, and you have to let them back to do the same thing over and over and over again, and that is not forgiveness. You can forgive and separate, and that's perfectly fine. There's a difference. So I'm not going to judge anybody or impose any kind of moral or religious doctrine or paradigms, but I encourage you to explore within yourself what it means to be able to forgive someone, say, hey, you did it, I feel this way, but I'm not carrying this with me. It's done. You do what you do. I'm moving forward, but you're not coming back to do the same thing over again. That is the healthy thing to do. So I encourage you to explore that concept in whatever way you find to be the most comfortable for your cultural and religious background, if you have one. So moving on from the gaslighting, which is a huge thing, is as you're evaluating how to move forward in things, remember your previous experiences. And while we want to forgive and we don't want to hold things against people, you do have to keep in mind your previous experiences with people. And if they do the same things over and over again without any legitimate and consistent expression of apology, repentance, or reforming their ways, or however you phrased it, where they're like, oh, I'm sorry, or hey, just take me back, or whatever, and they keep doing the same thing, and they're, oh, I'm sorry, or maybe they don't say they're sorry, and they keep doing the same thing. You have to stop and think, there's a point where this person is not sorry. They don't intend to change. They're going to keep exploiting me and doing the same thing until I draw a boundary. So while we want to be forgiving and we want to allow that people can change, and we want to allow for healing, and we want to allow for support, you do have to have a discerning sense of protection of, it has this person demonstrated to me consistently that they are aware of what they have done. They understand that it is abusive and toxic. They are taking steps to stop that behavior, and they are acknowledging and apologizing. Hey, I did this wrong thing to you. I am sorry. I was wrong. I am going to try to not do this again. If they will not apologize to you and acknowledge what they've done, they aren't sorry. And they don't have any intention of changing. They intend to manipulate you to take them back so they can do the same thing over and over again until you finally get rid of them. So that can be your gauge, is if someone is truly sorry and they're truly healing and they're truly trying to change, they will make it evident that they're trying to change. And they will have the introspection and self-awareness, integrity to say, hey, I know I did this to you and it was wrong. And I'm sorry, and this is what I'm going to do to move forward, and I'm serious about it. If they don't do that, they aren't serious. And it doesn't matter if they're your mama, your daddy, your ex-husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your sister, your best friend, your whatever. If they're not going to do these things, they are not serious about changing. They are trying to manipulate you, and you need to use discernment, and you need to draw on your self-preservation and your logic and your own instincts to understand that dealing with these people is going to get you more of the same that you've had this whole time, because they're not doing their work to change. Okay. So the other thing that you want to do, which is probably one of the most foundational parts of having boundaries with yourself, is you have got to take steps to stop the negative internal dialogue. And the negative internal dialogue that we get is usually imposed upon us from our abusers, right? You're a loser, you're not worthy, you're too ugly, you're too fat, you're too stupid, why can't you be like your brother or sister, blah, 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 whatever. You're a bad person, you're wrong, why aren't you smart enough, why aren't you this, why aren't you that? And even though there's that part of you that rises up that's like, no, that's not right, and you're right, it's not right, you have heard this so much that you internalize it and you repeat it to yourself. So if you hear yourself saying, I can't ever get anything right. No, they weren't bad. I messed up and I misinterpreted it and I'm wrong and I'm just such a bad person. Why am I such a loser? Why am I so this way? Why am I so that way? Why am I whatever? This is a negative internal dialogue. This is different from actual legitimate introspection and saying, hey, I do have an issue where I do this. I'm going to work on that. But it doesn't make me a loser and a horrible person, because I'm acknowledging I need to work on this. So I am, right? The internal negative dialogues it's the bullying that goes on in your own mind about yourself and replaying things that abusers or toxic or very dysregulated people have said to you that you internalize. You're like, I'm ugly, I'm not good enough, I'm too fat, I'm too old, I'm too stupid, I'm too this or too that, I'm just wrong, why can't I get it right? This whole bunch of things that go on. And when you start actually taking inventory of what your internal thought process is, you will find that you repeat key phrases over and over again, okay? And so start paying attention to that and see what your mind produces of what your deficiencies are, that are beyond what you are aware of, that you need to work on for your professional and character and personal growth, right? Pay attention to that and start flipping these things. When you hear, I'm a loser, why can't a guy get it right? I'm too fat, I'm too ugly, I'm too stupid, everybody hates me, nobody will ever love me, why am I always messing things up, why am I this, why am I that? Stop and think, where's this coming from? Is there a person that said this to you originally? And when this thought goes off in your mind, there's actually an associated image of where this came from. And it's probably not you, it's probably from somewhere else. Or it's this experience of something that happened to you when you were in second grade and your classmates were making fun of you and you keep this going. Or you had an abusive partner, or maybe a love interest who was just like, I would never date you because you're so fat and ugly and stupid. It could be 30 years later and you still have this going on in your mind, right? And so take inventory of this. As you are hearing these phrases, start flipping this. Yes, you may have messed up. Maybe you're not great at math. Maybe you are 20 pounds overweight. Maybe you do have a problem with your temper. Or maybe you don't have these problems and these were abusers projecting onto you. But whatever comes up in your mind is you counteract that with the opposite thought. Okay, I'm not good at this, but I'm super great at this. No, there are actually people who like me, and I know because I have these friends, or the next door neighbor likes me, or the dog likes me, or somebody. There's always, for every negative that comes against you, there is actually a counteracting positive real event and situation. We are just often conditioned as survivors of abuse and trauma and bullying to disregard the positive and only focus on the negative things that have happened. But I promise you, for anything that's bad that has happened to you, you can find an example somewhere of something that is not like what your abuser said. And so this is what you start saying to yourself. Okay, I'm not great at math, but I can build things. Okay, well, so-and-so didn't like me, but I have all these other friends that are amazing. And okay, maybe I'm not good at this, but I'm a loving, supportive friend. Okay, well, maybe so-and-so said I'm not good enough to be with, but I'm loving, and the one that he's with is a very abusive person who cheats on him and he stays there. So it's things like that. So start rewiring your mind to find the positive aspects of yourself. And I promise you that there are so very many. You are an incredible being. You are intelligent and talented and compassionate and loving and skilled, and you have perceptions and experiences and insight that other people don't have. You may have been told that you didn't and that you're worthless and you don't have that, but you do. And you know that you do because that's the part in you that comes up and lights up and gets angry when you're abused, because you know that you're more. Take that. Understand that, access it, and accept that it's true. You can actually accept all of the value that you have, because that is legitimately true. This was given to you by your Creator. It is with you. It will be with you. And you can access it and you can acknowledge that. And it is safe to acknowledge your own worth. It's safe to stand in your worth and to expect other people to treat you with a level of respect, particularly when you act with respect for others. It's a huge thing. You may find there are certain phrases that help you to start rewiring things. For me, because I just got used to feeling powerless, right? I had to put up with whatever came out to me. And so my go-to phrase to begin with was, I'm a queen, nobody causes me any problems. Now, I did not mean this in a narcissistic diva, like I'm a queen and people better cater to me and no, not the kind of thing at all. For me, it was an internal quietness of, I'm a sovereign being. I know what I bring. I know who I am. I know my intentions. I am not going to expect, project, or accept rejection and mess from other people. And a lot of what we get from other people can be based on the energy that we're putting out. If we expect to be bullied and we expect to be victim and we expect that we're less than, people pick up on that, and a lot of them will respond in kind, which reinforces this whole cycle, right? So when you stand in your sovereignty as a divinely created human, and you're like, no, I'm worthy. I don't have to be a narcissist. I don't have to be a diva. I don't have to be a bully. I don't have to be any things, but I know my dignity and I know what I bring and I know I deserve respect. This is where I'm at. I expect that other people will treat me with respect, and you stand in that and you keep that going. You will start seeing, as you stand in that, that is reflected back to you. And if that kind of particular phrase doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. It can be, people always treat me with respect, or I know I'm a good person. I know I'm smart. I know I bring value. I know I'm a good worker. I know I'm a good friend. I know I'm a good dog mom. whatever it is that you are knowing in yourself that you are. Stand in that and repeat that to yourself. Say that in your mind, and if you're in a place where you can say it out loud, say it out loud to yourself. I was in a very toxic work environment a while ago, and I would just say to myself, I'm like, no, I'm a queen and nobody causes me any problems. No, was I throwing my weight around and being a diva and all? No. I didn't do that. But I was just like, no, they're not. They're not bringing that mess to me. And once I started embodying that, they didn't bring mess. And when I got mess from people was when I started falling back into the old patterns of I'm persecuted, I'm a victim, people are doing things to me, people are playing against me. And guess what? That's what came about in my reality. I got the persecution and that kind of thing because I dropped out of expecting better and I accepted less and I got it. And so the whole conscious selection thing is a topic for another time, but it's been huge in my own personal journey. It's just understanding your own sovereignty and speaking that to yourself and speaking that loud and embodying that. And even for the times that we slide back into the old patterns, when you start recognizing, I'm doing that old thing again. I don't want to go back there. Get back on track. Get back on track and honor yourself. And when you honor yourself, other people will start treating you with honor. And the ones who are incapable of doing that will fall off. And you don't want those people. It doesn't matter who they are, who you thought they were. If they're not going to treat you with basic honor and respect, you do not want them in your life. They are not worth it. Let them go. Because in their place, there will be healthy people who do honor and respect you, and this is what you want. The final thing I'll go into, which is huge, is nervous system regulation. So for those of us who have a trauma background, our nervous systems are just out there. I know I spent most of my life in a chronic fight and flight. Like there was no peace. Day or night ever. If I was sleeping, if I was having fun, it did not matter what I was doing. I was always tense. I was waiting for the other shoe to fall. It was always catastrophizing. What's going to happen now? Oh, they hate me. This horrible thing is going to happen. I better get ready because any minute now something horrible is going to happen to me. And I couldn't relax. It was just like literally like that all the time. And so I started finding other things that would help, like listening to singing bowls and frequency music to help kind of modulate my brain waves. Breathing, because I found I would hold my breath forever. I would sit there like, and then finally, because I hadn't been breathing really the whole time. That's a huge trauma response. Learning to just freely breathe in and out, particularly if you engage your abdomen, like an opera singer, they call it diaphragmatic breathing, and breathe in and out, let that go. Learn just like letting your muscles relax. Whatever helps you, music, exercise, walking, taking a hot bath or a hot shower, spending time with a fur baby. If you are a religious person, reading your sacred text, reading spiritual text, engaging with electronic content that is affirming and regulating, whatever helps to calm your mind down from the perpetual spin is huge. And once you are able to start regulating yourself, where you see you're getting into like a state and you're able to be like, no, we're going to take a minute and we're going to breathe and we're going to stretch and we're going to shake it out and we're going to take a drink of water and we're going to walk away, or we're going to do whatever we need to do. And this often has to be kind of modified if you're in a work setting, right? But you can manage to do something. Drink water, breathe, stretch, maybe take a spin around the hall, or something to disengage yourself and just kind of bring it down. That's very, very helpful. And I have personally found it to be very helpful. And I am a late diagnosed autistic and ADHD person. And so I know with that there are extra nervous system regulation challenges. I'm going to cover this in another video because it is a thing. But I have found for myself, once I started implementing all of these, where I'm rewiring my self-talk and I'm rewiring helping regulate my nervous system. I found not only did my ability to set healthy boundaries and maintain them improve, my physical health improved, and so much improved because I was able to bring things down where I wasn't continually in a fear-based victim state, and I could start standing in my own power. So this has been kind of a long video, so I'm going to wrap it up here and come back later, but I just want to encourage you. Healthy boundaries start with you. It starts with you honoring who you are, not chasing after abusers, and taking self-care steps to start helping yourself to regulate. And regulate doesn't mean you're always happy and calm and everything's great. It just means you're not spazzing out. Or if you find yourself getting this way, that you're able to be like, and bring it down. And it's huge, because self-regulation does a lot toward preventing you from engaging in negative patterns with abusers. It's huge. I also encourage you, however this looks for you, that you start seeking connection, engagement with your higher power, because there is something beyond us. I think all of us, regardless of our religious affiliation or no affiliation, is aware that there's a consciousness beyond ourselves that wants you to heal and wants you to be prosperous, and you're here for a reason. So however that looks for you, I encourage you to start engaging with that and exploring other practices that help you. And I will be back with part 2, which will be defining what is a healthy boundary and what are toxic boundaries, and how we can differentiate and how we can avoid having these terms exploited to us. So anyway, I hope you are well, and I just encourage you to start honoring yourself, take time for yourself, and you are an absolutely fabulous person. I believe in you, and I will catch you another time. Bye.